This sculpture of Ganesha is considered the earliest representation of the elephant god. Part of the Udaygiri complex near Sanchi in what was ancient Vidisha. This complex dates back to the 5th century CE when the Guptas were at the height of their power. The Gupta Empire lasted for around 220 years, and we get a peek into their world through the temples they built and the coins that they left behind. Hoards of these, many in gold, have been found around the region of present-day Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. Sanjeev Kumar has spent over 3 decades tracing and studying Gupta coins, and the result is this book, The Treasures of the Gupta Empire, that is an authoritative work that brings together past research and breaks new ground, offering fascinating insights into the Gupta world. Many thanks for joining us today, Sanjeev. This is a conversation that we've been planning for a very long time, and I'm glad that you are with us. I've always been fascinated by the Guptas, and I think your book is such a lovely, in-depth study into this very formative period of India's history, looking at coins, but not only looking at coins, but looking at coins as a part of a larger whole, though you focus on them. I'm going to start by going to the very beginning. How did this book really shape up?
Well, the book is a work of love. I fell in love with these coins, the designs on these coins, going back when I was a little kid. My father was an army officer, and during his army career, he also finished his master's in history from Meerut University, and he had a beautiful collection of coins. I was allowed to look at them, not touch them necessarily, because these gold coins were quite valuable on an army officer's salary. So, as a young kid living in Delhi, I used to love going to the National Museum coin gallery. Of course, back then, none of us had any money to buy a ticket, so we always skipped over the fence and just entered for free and checked out the National Gallery. And it was really just fascinating. Which kid hasn't dreamt of digging up a treasure of gold coins? And that was my dream, to have a collection of gold coins. And as I grew older and started seeing these beautiful pieces of art, what was sad was to see that our history books never really celebrated this art. We only got to see Greek art or Roman art, but here we had in these Gupta designs, Gupta kings that had struck these beautiful gold coins, that art that rivaled the Roman art, the Greek art. So it was basically something that fascinated me from an art standpoint. And a little later in life, it became apparent that studying this was very important to really understand what was the message these designs were trying to show us. Whether a king is standing there with a javelin in his hand, or a battle axe in his hand, or playing the veena, what does it mean? What are they trying to show? What are they trying to tell us? What are they trying to explain? Gold coins of, for example, Kumaragupta show him killing a rhinoceros, hunting a rhinoceros. Well, a rhinoceros is only found in northern regions or the East Assam region. Did it mean that Kumaragupta had actually captured that territory, or Samudragupta hunting a tiger? Is it trying to convey that he was actually now in control of the Gangetic Plain? These are all things these are hidden messages in these coins, and it was basically like a jigsaw puzzle that had to be solved. And that's pretty much what the genesis of the book was all about.
It is also a very updated version on the Guptas, because you've referred to many, many works. And when you were talking about kids and their fascinations with digging gold, and I couldn't think of the Bayana Horde, which has such a wonderful story of kids playing. And this was the biggest hoard of Gupta coins that was found, and we've done a whole story on that. But we'll come to the Bayana hoard and what it showed. But let's put this period in context. We know, of course, that this was a very important phase in Indian history, because a lot of what we see as the iconography in Indian Hindu religion was actually shaped around this period of the Guptas. And if you just put this in the historical context for our viewers who are very familiar with the Gupta period, I'm sure, but just to put it in context as to why these coins are such a great example or a great focal point for the study of the Guptas.
Well, prior to the Guptas, it was the Kushanas that were basically ruling most of northern India, going from Gandhara all the way to Varanasi. The Kushanas also, while they primarily, originated around the Afghanistan, Gandharan region, they used Mathura as their winter capital. So Mathura became the epicenter of a lot of inscriptions and art. And as the Kushan empire, the dynasty, as it started waning, around 320 AD, we start having, the Gupta dynasty rise up right around that Kannauj, Kashi region. And what was going on at that time was there was a revival of the Hindu Brahmanical Vedic thought process. And there was a big effort to basically codify what does Vishnu look like? How do we depict Shiva in his human form? What is he supposed to be holding in his right hand or his left hand? The Shilpa Shastra of the sculptures. How does Lakshmi, what is Lakshmi supposed to look like? We think of Lakshmi today and immediately we see her seated on a lotus with a lotus bud in one hand, seated on a lotus flower. Well, that didn't exist back in the 4th century AD. That only came about primarily during the Gupta period, when Samudragupta starts this phase. And we start seeing, by the end of Samudragupta's reign, we start seeing a goddess emerge seated on a lotus under Chandragupta's time. But under Samudragupta's time, she's basically, the lotus petals are starting to appear under her feet. Slowly, lotus bud is starting to appear in her hands. These are all designs we see on the gold coins. Now, the good thing about gold coins is they don't corrode. Copper coins, they corrode. Lead coins don't last that well, but gold coins basically hold their designs forever unless they're damaged. So this is a very important iconographic evolution that we see during the Gupta period. It's just fascinating because we can actually document how these designs came about.
Right. We'll talk about that because Lakshmi herself, as depicted in the Gupta coins, is an interesting story, has very interesting roots, perhaps in the Kushana Shaka area of a more Central Asia, Iran, Persia kind of a geographical spread. But let's talk about the dynasty itself, just to put it in context. So the Guptas were in power for about 220 years, from beginning to the decline. They came in after a period of great unrest. They gave stability, after which there was unrest. So they are really a period of stability in Indian history. How can we look and understand the personality of the great rulers, be it Samudragupta or Chandragupta I and Chandragupta II and Kumaragupta, etc., through their coins? When you have studied the coins for so long, do the personalities of these rulers stand out?
Yes, because you have to consider that the gold coins were actually big propaganda pieces. This was what is gold used for? It is either used as a store of value or it is for large transactions. When they are trying to buy land, they buy it for 3 dinaras. The gold coins of Guptas were called dinaras, by the way. And when we look at the copper plate inscriptions, which were basically documenting a land grant, they would say, for 3 dinaras, we are buying this piece of land for this temple, etc. So these coins the designs on the coins and the legend that is written around the design in Brahmi and Gupta Brahmi shows what exactly was going on in their minds, whether they are getting ready for battle. If they're getting ready for battle, for example, when Chandragupta I comes to power, a few of the key coins that he issues, one of them shows him on the back is in a design where the king and queen are seated on a couch, but it's emulating the Vaikuntha scene of Vishnu, and he's showing that he's like a deity. He's got the divine blessing to rule and have power to expand his kingdom. He's shown holding a spear, inverted spear in his hand, basically doing puja, in front of a fire oven. The Samudragupta either holding a bow and arrow in his hand or playing the veena in his later years shows that, for example, the veena coin basically shows that there was peace in the land as compared to the militaristic phase, which was the early phase of Samudragupta's coinage, where he was expanding the empire. In the expansion period, his coins are the bow and arrow in his hand, the javelin, the battle axe. The battle axe talk about him being the god of death, basically warning his neighboring kings that get out of my way. I am the god of death coming your way, and if you don't get out of my way, you will basically die. The Ashwamedha coins, which is the horse sacrifice. So these are all beautiful images with messages to the population, telling them that, I have the divine right to rule. I'm all powerful. I'm valiant. I'm generous. These are messages that help us understand what was going on in their mind. For example, if you take coins of Kumaragupta, for example, we have a very beautiful, really tiny coin. I mean, this is how tiny they are. This is a little tiny, where is it? Little tiny coin. This is a Skandagupta coin. But Kumaragupta's coin is this small. It is a Pratiga scene where it's he's being crowned as a king. And these are all recorded. These are in gold. And in silver, we find silver and lead coins. We find actual dates on them. Very, very rare coins, but by studying the dates, we can actually tell when these events were taking place. And these dates then help us correct the history as it's written, because our history books a lot of it was conjecture. A majority of our history during this period was written in the 50s and 60s. And after that, it was mostly copy and paste, no original research was done. And this kind of a book pulls it all together and is able to set the record straight with facts which show, look, Chandragupta was actually in battle with the Kshatraps, but it was only happening around 400 AD, not 415, not 380. We have specific time points in time we can point to and say this is when things were happening, and these designs then emulate what the kings are trying to tell us.
Sure. You've actually spoken of busting a lot of myths, also talking about how these coins were also used for propaganda. And I'm going to pick out one story, which is really Ramagupta's brief stint. And we know, of course, of Chandragupta II and how he protected his brother's wife. This is something that, has come down to us through Sanskrit plays, etc. But your evidence shows otherwise. Can you tell us about this little incident?
Well, our history books say that, and talking of propaganda, Chandragupta's courtier, Vishakadatta, basically wrote this beautiful Sanskrit play called Devi Chandraguptam. And this play basically says that, Chandragupta, Maharaja Chandragupta, he's the most valiant and most powerful king, but he protected the Gupta dynasty's honor by killing his brother Ramgupta, because Ramgupta had brought shame on the dynasty by he had basically lost to the Shaka king and given his wife as to the Shaka king as a peace settlement. And these are all wrong. This was basically propaganda, because in fact what happened was Chandragupta II killed Ramgupta to basically take the crown. When Samudragupta died, Ramgupta was the governor of Vidisha. Now, why Vidisha? Vidisha is at the center of India. It is at the crossroads of the trade routes from north to south to east to west. And when Gupta kings always installed either a brother or a son as the governor of that Vidisha region. Because if you control that region and the trade, you control the economy. So Ramgupta is serving as governor of Vidisha, and Samudragupta basically is in his last days, and there is a struggle for who's going to control the crown. Well, Ramgupta is the older brother, so he therefore starts making the waves to basically take the throne, and he assumes the name Kachgupta. Now, how do we know that? We have actually a copper coin. It's a Ashwamedha scene on the copper coin with Kach written below it, and on the back of the coin it says Maharaja Ramagupta. So we have that link. And then he starts issuing these gold coins where he's actually, instead of Garuda standard, which Garuda was the imperial symbol of the Gupta Dynasty, instead of a Garuda sitting on a stand, which is on all the gold coins, Kachgupta is actually holding a chakra dhwaj, a chakra standard. Basically a dharma chakra. I am the protector of the dharma, I'm the protector of the values. And this is what he issues prior to taking the throne. And then there is a fight between Chandragupta and Ramgupta, or Kachgupta as he has taken the name, basically seizes control of the throne. And how do we know this? Is because there are 3 coins known in gold which are issued by the royal mint. On these coins, on the front of the coins, we can see that in the past, the Garuda Dhwaj, the Garuda that was on the gold coins, was missing, but on this coin struck by the royal mint, now we can see the Garuda appear, which shows that the Garuda being on the coin signifies he is now the monarch, he is now in control of the throne. On the back of the coins, we see the goddess that has now appeared holding a flower in her hand, which basically signifies Lakshmi and the divine right to rule. But there are only 3 coins, so it's very clear that his rule lasted for a short time, and he was basically assassinated by Chandragupta II, who took over the throne, probably recalled most of these coins which had the Garuda on it, and melted them. Only 3 or 4 have survived. Well, this is the coin evidence, but we also have inscriptional evidence from the neighboring king, the Sanjan copper plates, which talk of this shameful act where the Gupta king has killed his older brother to take the throne. So we have inscriptional evidence, and we have the evidence from the coins, which can bring this story together and basically show that this Devi Chandragupta was basically a propaganda piece put out to basically color the story and make Chandragupta look like he was the good guy in this whole thing. So this is how coins actually help us.
Rewriting history was a thing in the past, but what is interesting is that this is why we need multiple angles in which to look at a particular event, a particular dynasty, or a particular moment in history, because they all add to each other's in our understanding. Before I come to some of the picks that you have for us among these coins, I'm going to ask you about the evolution of Lakshmi. A lot has been spoken about it, but I think you have visual references to how the image of Lakshmi gets kind of developed into what we are familiar with today, right? The Gaja Lakshmi, right, or the Lakshmi who's holding the pot of gold, for instance, etc. To explain to us while we play out or place these pictures, explain to us how you see it evolve and over what time.
So around the first century BC or so, we start initially seeing the iconography of Lakshmi develop, and the Gaja Lakshmi, which is the two elephants, uh, above Lakshmi pouring water on her. It's during the Gupta period that we actually start seeing codification of her attributes, codification of what she's supposed to really look like as we recognize her as today, seated on a lotus flower, holding lotus buds in her hand. What happened is Kushans, on the back of their coins, used to show a deity by the name of Ardaksho. Ardaksho was an Iranian goddess of fortune. She was a goddess that was seated on a throne, and in her left hand, she would be holding basically a cornucopia, which is a horn of plenty. This is going back to the goddess Fortuna of Roman times. Same kind of iconography. Goddess Fortuna used to also hold a cornucopia. So anyway, once the Kushans developed this, and this became basically their standard design on the back of all gold coins in the later part of the Kushan dynasty. Now, remember I mentioned earlier that the Kushans basically used Mathura as their winter capital. The gold coins of Kushans were very high gold content, and in trade, they became the standard currency during that time as a trusted currency. So this design of Goddess Ardaksho was quite popular in North India. Then once the Kushans disintegrated, the empire disintegrated, here comes Chandragupta I and starts expanding his empire. We start seeing that on the back of the coins, from Chandragupta I to Samudragupta, we start seeing the goddess design change. The goddess design on the back of these coins starts changing from a goddess Ardaksho to an Indian goddess. And over the 40 odd years of Samudragupta's reign, we can actually see that slowly this seated goddess, seated on a throne, starts having lotus petals appear below her feet. And as time goes by, in these gold coins, we start seeing designs where she still has lotus petals under her leaves, but she's holding the cornucopia. As time goes back, that by the cornucopia changes to a lotus flower. And then at the end of Samudragupta's term, reign, and into Chandragupta II, we start seeing this new design appear, which is Goddess Lakshmi seated on a lotus. Throne has disappeared, and now she's only holding the lotus flower. This is captured in the gold coins during this period of 340 AD to about 380 AD. This 40-50 year period was the most crucial period in India's history, where they actually codified what our deities were supposed to look like.
Yes, and across Vidisha, which you mentioned, of course, you have the earliest references to this iconography in Udaygiri, in Eran, and that entire belt, which we've done a lot of work on. Sanjeev, apart from Lakshmi, you've traced to Nana, another figure who is very omnipresent in some of the earlier coins. And you have Ganga coming into prominence. Now, Ganga also is a very prominent figure in Udaygiri, in all the iconography that you see in that Gupta trail that we have done now. Do talk about these two.
So I'll start with Ganga. For example, as one of the other videos you had done where you talked about the Gupta era temples, one of the key features of a Gupta era temple for the first time was to have Ganga and Yamuna on the outside of the temples. And of course, the water being the sustenance of our culture and life and civilization, these were important deities that became very part and parcel of our temples. Now, goddess Ganga, according to the mythology, emerges from from Ganges, holding a lotus flower in her hand, and she actually is riding, her vahana is, her vehicle is the mythological animal, the creature, the makra. So the makra is shown with goddess Ganga riding on this creature on the back of few of the coins struck by Samudragupta, the tiger slayer type, very important coin. But this shows us, this actually, we are able to pinpoint the time when this actually came about. This came about the same time as those temples were built that you had highlighted earlier. The coins were struck. Now, when were these Tiger Slayer coins with goddess Ganga struck? Very early in Samudragupta's reign, because when we look at the figure, he's shown as a young, youthful, muscular man, firing his arrow from the bow at a tiger that is pouncing at him. So this is a young Samudragupta, and on the back of the coin, it does not say Maharaja or Maharaja Dhiraja. It says Raja Samudragupta. So it basically shows that this was a young prince, or maybe even just a young king. So we can date this evolution of Ganga, goddess Ganga, appearing on the Indian scene around 340 AD. It's very easy to point that, rather than saying it was at the end, because comparatively, when you look at coins of the Lyris type, the Veena type, we see an older monarch. He's shown as an old man playing the Veena. Now, coming back to Durga, very important. Goddess Durga actually evolves from goddess Nana, who's an Iranian goddess, and she, goddess Nana is usually shown seated on a lion. Now, remember I talked about Kushan coins where we have goddess on a throne. In early coins struck around mid 300 AD, we start seeing on the gold coin appearing where she's got her feet resting on a lion. And this generally, this becomes a major design around Chandragupta II, where this goddess is basically subduing a lion by being seated on it. And why do we see this? During Samudragupta's rule, when Samudragupta was expanding his empire, he never was able to conquer Gujarat and that region, because that region had the ports going to Alexandria and trade with Rome. That was under the control of Kshatrapa kings, the Shaka kings. So Samudragupta basically stopped at the border with the Kshatrapas and literally left them alone. Chandragupta comes around 386, 389 AD, and by about 400 AD, we start seeing him basically taking control of a lot of the Gujarat region, Gujarat area. So Gir forest is where the lions are found, and the symbology there is that I am defeating the lions. I'm powerful. I can kill the lion. So that's where a lot of the symbology in the front of the coin, where we have the king possibly with some designs show him with a sword trying to kill a lion on the or with a bow and arrow trying to kill a lion. Some coins with even with a spear trying to kill a lion. And then we have on the back, we have goddess Durga, which is actually Simhavahani Lakshmi. She's a goddess Lakshmi holding a lotus, sitting on a lion, in many cases dropping coins with her hand. This imagery starts appearing. And during this period, what we see is, as time goes by, the design gets codified. The throne that was, the goddess was seated on a throne. In many coins, we see the throne and also the lion, where the goddess is seated on a lion, and there is actually remnants of a throne back behind her. And then as time goes by, the throne disappears, and then all we see is the goddess seated on a lion. So this is the evolution of the actual design of Durga.
Right. And you, of course, through your answers have also spoken about how the territorial expansion, in a sense, is also reflected in these coins. But let's move on. You've covered a lot of ground with coins, and we've got a fantastic reference point. But what are the 2, 3, or let's say 4, 5 coins that really stand out for you? Coins that you just love, because there's always that little, the favorites among collectors.
Oh my gosh, that is such a difficult question, because if I only had 4 or 5 coins, I would have stopped at 4 or 5, not thousands.
I know. So it's a tough question. Sorry.
Actually, we have the cover of my book, which its copy is sitting right there. Yeah. So cover of my book shows a King Samudragupta standing with an inverted javelin in his left hand. He is doing what is called the Ayodhya Puja, the religious ceremony prior to going to battle, the worship of weapons and tools. This is a very symbolic scene. And the reason I chose this coin for the cover was this design is just fascinating. On the top of his head, we see a Chandra crown, a crescent moon. He is just so regal. And in front of him is what we call a Garuda, the Garuda standing on a pedestal. We also see, for example, one of the other favorite coins is the Tiger Slayer coin that I was referring to. That design is just amazing. And it is, it is a very beautiful design, rivaling the Roman and the Greek art. Another excellent coin is, for example, the Veena coin, where the king is playing a lyre, stringed instruments. It's so beautiful that you can actually see the individual strings around his fingers. Beautiful coins like the Aswamedha type, where the king is actually doing the horse worship before letting the horse loose. And we have the Elephant Slayer coin, where King Kumaragupta is riding an elephant into battle. Another beautiful coin. You said 4 or 5. I have quite a few coins. Beautiful coins. There is a beautiful type of coin in Guptas called the battle axe coin, where a King Samudragupta is actually holding a battle axe in his hand. Beautiful designs. There are hundreds of coins. There's the King and Lakshmi type of Skandagupta. We should talk about Skandagupta. Skandagupta is a king that has did not get a lot of credit in history books. His coin of King and Lakshmi type is actually one of the most iconic coins of the Gupta dynasty. He was not from royal blood, and his, we talked about Ram Gupta and Kach Gupta and Chandragupta, Game of Thrones. This was Game of Thrones Part 2 when Skandagupta came to power. What happened is Chandragupta II, his grandfather, had married off his daughter Prabhavati Gupta to the Vakataka king to basically have a marriage alliance so that they could live peacefully. Well, she literally ruled the Vakataka empire because her husband died at a very young age, and she basically became the regent queen. So she kept peace in that region. But when Kumaragupta was at the end of his reign, the Vakatakas rose up and wanted to basically install Ghatotkacha, who was Skandagupta's brother, as the king. And Skandagupta basically puts down that rebellion. Now, in the Junagadh rock inscriptions, there is a reference to Nagas rising up. And, historians have incorrectly identified the Nagas as some hill people and whatnot. The Nagas are the Nagas of Padmavati. The Nagas and Vakatakas had marriage alliance. They were married to each other. They were a powerful force in the Gujarat and the Malwa region. These Naga and Vakataka armies basically rose up against to fill the void that Kumaragupta, as he was in his last days, going to have. And Skandagupta, in charge of the Gupta army, basically puts down that rebellion. And Junagadh, which is, of course, in Gujarat, is where he puts that rock inscription, says, I came here, I have conquered the Nagas, and they are done. I'm in control. And we have lead coins issued in that Junagadh area. So these coins, whether they're gold coins or lead coins or silver coins, these are just data banks of information, literally.
Absolutely. In fact, talking about women also, Prabhavati Gupta is a very interesting character. Again, I have actually gone to Nagardhan, which was her old capital, and been part of an archaeological dig over there. But what is also interesting is for the Guptas, marriage alliances were very important. You have the starting off with the Lichavi princess, which Chandragupta I does. Then you have that whole story of Chandragupta II with Dhruva Devi, again a very important figure. And there are coins with the king and queen. So how are women represented, the royal women represented in the coins?
Prominently. It is interesting that in our Hindu dynasty really featured these queens, the king and queen type that you mentioned. It starts out with the first king, the Chandragupta I, the very first gold coin struck by King Chandragupta I, like I mentioned earlier, shows him seated with his queen on a couch. And then later on, the king and queen type coins are struck, which show him basically standing on the front of the coin. We see him standing with his queen, offering her either a ring or sindoor. Different coins, by the way, show different things being held in the king's hand. Queens were very important and powerful during that time. And as we saw with Prabhavati Gupta, she basically kept the peace for almost 40 plus years in that region. So very well depicted.
The mention of Vikramaditya also brings to the for another question, which you've spoken about extensively. There's this great mixed mystery on who Vikramaditya was, and you have said that looking at the coins, it seems that he was like a phantom-like figure, because all the Gupta kings did adopt the title Vikramaditya in some form. So it might be for a generation of kings rather than a single individual. Please explain that.
So think of Vikramaditya as a title taken by kings across ancient India in a way to consider themselves the most valorous, the most benevolent, the most powerful kings. It was a title adopted by almost many kings. The first use of Vikramaditya comes from the Malwa area, the Malwa tribe, chief of the Malwa tribe of Ujjaini, who initiated the Vikrama Samvat around 57 BC. After that, we find when Chandragupta I comes to power after the Kushanas, he adopts an imperial title of Biruda, which is Vikramaditya, or on his coins is listed as Shri Vikrama. This title continues to be used for the next 220 years by different kings in the Gupta dynasty, and they keep using versions of it, either Shri Vikrama or Vikramaditya, on their coins, because during that time, two things were very important. One was the memory of a great king with the population. In far off reaches of the empire, it was easier to explain that you are under the rule of King Vikramaditya than to say, oh, by the way, you are under the rule of, Chandragupta II or, Kumaragupta III. Vikramaditya was a common, all-encompassing name. And this is very similar to the concept of coins. When coins were issued, it was a function of trust. A coin and a currency can only be accepted by a population if there is trust in it. And how does one get trust? A trust comes when people see familiar designs, familiar names on the coins. And whenever in history, whenever a territory was conquered, the kings ended up issuing currency in their name, but using the designs that were already prevalent in that region. For example, when Kushans basically died off and Guptas came, they copied the Kushan currency. When Chandragupta II basically conquered the Gujarat region, his silver coins issued were identical to the silver coins issued by Kshatripa kings. Only difference was now it said Chandragupta's name on it, and it had a Garud instead of 3 arch hills or something else. So this is a ongoing, this Vikramaditya concept is basically the king saying, I'm all powerful, all benevolent. And there was not when we use the word Vikramaditya, we cannot say it was one single king. We have to say, okay, which Vikramaditya are you talking about?
There was also Satvahana Vikramaditya, because, the Vikram Samvat is also attributed to him. But moving on, the Gupta Empire rose amidst great chaos. And that is why they say that, they went back to the iconography. The whole concept of Kali Yuga came, and the whole strife of the period was, something that kind of influenced how faith shaped. But it also ended with a very massive invasion, right? With the Hunas coming down, Mihirakula, and, all of that. What happened to the Gupta coinage? Because they had copious amounts of gold coins, but gold, like you said, yes, it doesn't get, it perhaps lasts the longest, but it also gets melted the fastest. And in India, we're a gold-obsessed country. So, there have been multiple layers of melting of gold coins. So what happens to these coins, and how is it that we find these hoards like Bayana, etc., in different parts? And give us a mental picture of what has been found.
So the Hunas start making their advance towards the end of around 580 or so after Buddhagupta. We actually have inscriptions where Buddhagupta is involved in battles with the Hunas. And when we have, for example, there is a coin in the Gupta coinage called, with the name, the king is using the name Prakasaditya. The Prakasaditya is actually a coin issued by Tormana, the Huna king, in the name of a Gupta design and a Gupta name, because again, this was a currency that had to be accepted. A good high percentage of gold in the coin, but it emulates the Gupta coinage. Around that only lasted for about 20 years or so, and then the Gupta dynasty basically dies off, and we find a big void in gold coins till the 11th, 12th century, when the sultanates start coming into and establishing themselves in India. And the reason is that in order for a gold currency to be issued, there has to be vast resources under the control of a king. That, the Guptas controlled the vast portion of north and central India. These resources were easy for them with trade, with Roman gold coming in, melted and made into Gupta gold coins. So what we find is, even today, in this Madhya Pradesh, UP, Kota, Jaipur, Rajasthan, all the way to the Lucknow, Varanasi area, the Kashi Kannauj region, we find tons of gold coins found all the time. And even today, as far back as just a few months back. And the reason is, gold coins were continued to be used as a medium of exchange and currency, even though the Kushanas had died off 1,000 years back and Guptas had died off 700 years back. They continued to be used as currency. Because it was, approximately 8 grams, and the moneyers and the goldsmiths knew that this much real gold is in it, and it was accepted. So it continued, and no other big dynasty came in. till about the 12th century or so to replace that coinage. And when they came, they probably found all the gold coins, melted them, and issued it in their name, as the Sultanates or the Mughals did. As far as the hoards go, the Bayana hoard is a very important resource for us. When it was first found, Maharaja of Bharatpur basically tried to get his hands on it. There were about 2,100 gold coins, it's estimated. Only about 1,900 some coins were actually recovered because the villagers who found it actually started melting them, knowing fully well that at one point they would get confiscated. I'll share some images with you where you'll see the Maharaja of Bharatpur actually gifted 150 coins to the National Museum, to the Bharat Kala Bhavan, to this museum, that museum, and then so many were left over. He just made jewelry out of them, buttons for his blazer out of them. And I ended up finding quite a few of them in auctions in the United States. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. The coin is beautifully encased in a clasp without damaging it. On the back, it says Bayana Hoard, the name of the king. And in fact, there's a funny story. Many, many moons back, when I was a young man, just newly married to my wife, we didn't even have a couch in our house. But we had a house, but we didn't even have a couch. I went to this coin show and found this one Bayana Hoard coin for Tiger Slayer coin, beautiful one, for $750. That was a lot of money back then. So I thought, oh, well, I'm going to take one. There were 7 of them in that group. Came back, told my wife, I showed it to her. She's like, amazing, this is beautiful. Why didn't you buy the rest of them? And I'm like, what? You're okay with me buying the rest of them? She's like, yeah, you should buy the rest of them. They're really valuable. And I'm like, but we don't even have a couch. And she's like, okay, it's okay, just go buy them. So I picked up a few. So, when you are trying to do these collections and these kind of, it's important when your spouse supports it too. So yeah, so today it's a big collection, but thanks to my wife's blessings also.
Right, Sanjeev, and it's a good point to note and of course acknowledge, because absolutely a collection can grow only that way. And it's so fascinating to hear you talk, Sanjeev, and share with us your insights. I would love to come and see the collection one day, and
absolutely.
And look at it with you. But it has been a wonderful conversation. Many thanks for joining us and taking us through the world of the Guptas through their coins. Thank you so much.
Thank you for